This is Tiffany Slaton. She's in a press conference because she was lost for 23 days in the Sierra Mountains. She says when she was lost, she fell off a cliff. She had to splint one of her legs. She had to pop the kneecap in on her other leg. She was in 13 snowstorms, 2 avalanches, lost her bike, her tent, and her 2 sleeping bags. And then they found her in this resort cabin 23 days later. And she said if they hadn't found her that day, all they would have found was her body. A lot of people are questioning this and thinking, this doesn't sound right to me. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through this almost sentence by sentence to help you make a better decision about what you're seeing, about whether she's being honest about this or not.
And she will share a little bit of her story as well.
Hello. I didn't really come up with anything that's super planned for this. It's literally only been 2 days. But I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, this looks odd right out the gate. Why is that? Because it's been 2 days since she's been found, and she's wearing a blanket like she just got found, like she's just been found, and that's a little bit weird. But the sunglasses I understand because there's a thing called snow blindness, and when you get out in the snow for a long time, the UV rays from the sun reflecting off the snow, that'll mess your eyes up. So I'm sure that's probably why she's wearing the sunglasses. The situation with the blanket, that could be because she's insecure. She could be really nervous, probably is, because we're not seeing any body language that would show she's just been found. We're not showing concern or worry or shock or anything like that. It has been 2 days, so that wears off a little bit, but it lasts longer than 2 days usually, especially when you start talking about it.
When I started, I had pretty much fallen off of a cliff trying to go on vacation for the first time. I may never do a real vacation longer than 3 days ever again.
She says, I pretty much fell off a cliff. You don't pretty much fall off a cliff. You fall off a cliff. And you give details about that, especially if it's a press conference. Everybody wants to know what happened. It may sound a little dramatic, but if it's that big a deal for you, you'll give the details of that. That's a pretty big deal, falling off a cliff. She's fairly still. That's understandable, again, because she's probably nervous. She's got that blanket on her, so that's a barrier. You can look at that as a barrier, which is helping with that insecurity and that lack of confidence. But she's leaving out way too many details, in my opinion, for something like this. But I'm going to let it slide because she's probably nervous, and that would make sense.
When I fell off of this cliff, I was unconscious for about 2 hours and did indeed have to splint one of my legs and pop the other knee back into place.
She says this cliff.
When I fell off of this cliff.
Never heard it put that way, unless you're showing a picture of something. On this cliff, this happened, but not when you were personally involved with that, like falling off of it. And then she says she was knocked out for 2 hours. Knocked unconscious.
When I fell off of this cliff, I was unconscious for about 2 hours.
Most people, every person I've talked to has no clue of how long they were unconscious if they've been knocked out. Could be 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days. Most of them don't know, but maybe she looked at her watch just before she got knocked out and then looked at it right after she got up. That's one thing. But we don't see any concern in her face on her facial expressions. I know her eyes are blocked with the glasses, but still you'd see something in there down here. You might see the sides of the mouth come down a little bit, something in the chin boss, concern, frustration, fear, when you're remembering those things.
And did indeed have to splint one of my legs and pop the other knee back into place.
So there's not much confidence with these answers, these statements she's making so far, but that's okay. Again, maybe she's nervous here at the top. Let's see how it goes.
Of course, like a normal person, the first thing you're supposed to do is call 911, and I attempted that 4, 5 times with no avail, and eventually got mad at my GPS and decided to ask, well, where's the nearest Starbucks? It's like, oh, well, we can answer that question. It's 18 miles from here.
All right, I've got a real problem with this because if you can't get the phone to work, you can't get your GPS to work. Even though you got mad at it, you can't ask Siri anything because Siri won't know because it can't get to the internet.
Where's the nearest Starbucks? It's like, oh, well, we can answer that question. It's 18 miles from here.
In my opinion, this is deceptive. It's not true. The body language you're seeing is a little bit over the top, especially when she starts talking about, oh, it's 18 miles away. So again, that's qualifying, but you're qualifying with body language. She's smiling and trying to make you think she thinks it's funny.
Oh, well, we can answer that question. It's 18 miles from here.
And again, we're not seeing any concern, worry, fear, frustration, anything that's real in here so far. Just a lot of smiling and a little bit of laughing and fake confidence.
You can't give me 911, you can't get me GPS, but you can get me a Starbucks? Yes, we can. It's also a shorter distance than trying to find the entrance.
I don't know why nobody asked her about that. I don't know why nobody said, hey, how did that work? How did you get your Siri to work if your phone and your GPS aren't working? I don't understand why nobody asked that.
I haven't really gone through all of the details. I ran out of a lot of food after 5 days, but I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have.
These are classic signs of a nervous speaker. She's really still and moving her head and her body at the same time. At the end of that, she sort of gets animated just a little bit. So I think this part of it's just nervousness.
Well, what did you eat? I mean, you were in the elements for how many days, and what did you eat? And did you ever, at any point, think, I'm not going to make it?
Well, the worst thing that you can do in an emergency situation is panic. I'm a traveling dialysis technician and an archery coach by trade. I didn't want to panic. In the first 5 days, I was still ready for my vacation. I had some of Fresno's best citrus, which was funny because I'm kind of allergic to it at that point, but I did have food to begin with. But I'm a trained permaculturalist. That means I'm very good at foraging and helping people not go to the grocery store in very rural areas. And the Sierras has a large selection of leeks that is hard to find in other places. In case you don't know what that is, it's sort of a green onion, and I managed to survive off of these leeks and boiling the snow melt for a very long period of time, actually. And I journaled it. I think I've been out maybe 20, 23 days on this.
We get a lot of information there, and I'm not quite sure how being a traveling dialysis technician and an archery coach would help you not panic if you're lost in the wilderness.
The worst thing that you can do in an emergency situation is panic. I'm a traveling dialysis technician and an archery coach by trade.
Also, why is she carrying around food she's allergic to if she's a trained permacologist and educated about food and foraging?
I had some of Fresno's best citrus, which was funny because I'm kind of allergic to it at that point.
Still, there's no body language of worry, frustration, concern, just a little bit of nervousness. What really bothers me is at the end where she does a lip grip. It's kind of big, kind of big. I don't know if she is under the impression this isn't going well, or maybe she thinks she said something she shouldn't have, or feels odd about saying things she should have. Then again, this could all go back to nervousness. Keep that in mind. And she looks pretty healthy for just having leeks and hot water to eat for 23 days. On Behavior X, my goal is to help you see beyond the surface, spot deception, and analyze the true intent behind the words. It's a mission I feel strongly about in today's biased and overwhelming landscape. Mainstream media tends to blur the truth and make it difficult to see through the chaos. This is why I'm proud to have Ground News as a sponsor. They help readers look beyond the mainstream narratives and uncover patterns in the way today's news frames recent issues or even fails to cover them in the first place. For every story you read on their app or website, you get instant access to every outlet that's reporting on it. Plus, a breakdown of each source's political bias, how subjective their reporting tends to be, and if they're independently owned or funded by corporations or governments. Ground News really helps you see the subtle ways media can heavily shape public opinion. Check it out by scanning this QR code or go to ground.news/Rouse, R-O-U-S-E. Viewers get 40% off unlimited access, whether it's for you to subscribe or for you to give it to a gift to somebody else. Ground News is independent and it's subscriber funded. And by subscribing, you're not only getting a great product, you're directly helping support my channel.
You slept outside, or do you have any cover at all?
At the beginning, I was coming to try and do a camping trip, so I had 2 sleeping bags and a basic tent. But at the end, after fighting nature for such a long time, I lost my tent, I lost my vestibule, and I did eventually lose both sleeping bags. So I was outside with nothing but a lighter and a knife.
She doesn't detail how she lost the most important things to her besides food, and that's her tent and 2 sleeping bags and her bike. No details on any of that at all.
I lost my tent, I lost my vestibule, and I did eventually lose both sleeping bags.
She doesn't tell us how she kept herself safe from the elements during all that, because it got pretty dang cold out there. And if you don't have a sleeping bag or a tent, that's real trouble if you're up in the Sierras and it's snowing like that, 13 snowstorms. That's a big deal. And after that, she does the lip grip thing or lip compression. She brings a blanket around her just a little bit more, a little bit tighter. Then we hear her breathe out loud enough to be heard on the microphone.
Lighter and a knife.
Now, keep in mind, these are all stress cues we're seeing, and that could be coming from her reliving or going through that situation she was in, and we're seeing that come out in her body language, or it could be the stress from not being honest. I'm tending to lean toward the part about, it looks to me like, in my opinion, not being honest. This looks a little deceptive here.
After many days, how do you avoid death to survive?
How did I avoid death? I'm pretty good at foraging, and nature is quite terrifying. So usually once you start finding things that are scary for you, you do your best to keep moving and get over it. And because of the mountains, I literally got over quite a few of them.
Tiffany, the sheriff mentioned
This one looks deceptive to me as well. She doesn't talk about the details of anything. She didn't answer the question. She talked about being a good forager,
I'm pretty good at foraging.
and that she got over the mountains,
Because of the mountains, I literally got over quite a few of them.
but no details about any of this. Then at the end, we see that lip compression after she stretches her neck. That's adapting and concealing. And I think she knows that's a lame answer.
Tiffany, the sheriff mentioned you have something called ballerina syndrome. Is that accurate? And if so, what does that do in terms of making it difficult for you to hide?
So ballerina syndrome is it's a syndrome that involves kind of what's known as a high arch. I'm unable to keep my feet on. Can't keep my heels on the ground for more than 3 inches, and it kind of looks like this.
Is that from dancing?
Not from dancing. I was born with this syndrome. And what it does is over time, you end up not being able to keep your heels on the ground. So things like snowshoes are not something I can find because, well, stilettos are not exactly the best of athletic wear. But I tried my best to find what I could and found a pair of heels made out of leather.
Tiffany, how grateful
It doesn't look to me like she's having problems keeping her heels on the ground, because when she walks back there to show them what ballerina syndrome looks like, that's when she pops up. It could be one of those situations where it happens when you're walking or you're hiking a lot. It starts happening, but it's that Achilles tendon back there that tightens up, and that's what makes that happen. So you can't get your heels on the ground. It's really, really painful. Sometimes you have to have surgery to have that fixed, and sometimes people with autism will have that. Sometimes kids will walk around their tiptoes all the time. Their parents don't correct them, so that causes a small problem with that. There are neurological situations like MS that may cause that as well. But in this situation, I don't know. It looks like she's getting up and down on that fairly easily.
Tiffany, how grateful are you of that man who, left that door open for people just like you, people in need? How grateful are you?
I honestly do not think that without Vermilion Resort, I would not be here at that moment, because that was the 13th heavy snowstorm I had been in, and it was going to be the last one. If he hadn't have come that day, they would have found my body there.
This doesn't look like a person who's only had 2 days to recover from being at death's door, literally, like she says. One more day and all they would have found was her body. She doesn't look emaciated. She doesn't look dehydrated. She doesn't look starved. She doesn't look worried or concerned when she's talking about that. There's a lot missing from this. In my opinion, this is completely false.
What injuries did you sustain?
I've got into an avalanche and 2 landslides in the process. When I came into the hospital, somehow because of the foraging, my blood work was perfect. But I did have a lot of micro cuts. I have a lot of burns, but nothing that I don't think time will be able to heal.
At the beginning of this, I think I said 2 avalanches. Apparently it's 2 landslides and 1 avalanche. In this description of the problem she had, of the injuries she's got, she didn't bring up that falling off a cliff and messing her legs up. Didn't come up. Didn't come up about being knocked unconscious. And perfect blood work after 23 days of nothing but leaks and hot water, you're not going to have perfect blood work. It's not going to happen. There may be some sort of miracle out there with someone, but I don't think that's going to happen just eating that. You're not getting vitamins, the minerals, the nutrients you need, no protein, and hiking for miles every day in the snow, in the cold, that's going to heat you up. Where are you getting the carbs? The amount of carbs that would sustain that.
When I came into the hospital, somehow because of the foraging, my blood work was perfect.
She would sound a lot different. She would look a lot different. Her body language would be different. She still got all her muscles working properly. From what we've seen so far, I mean, there's not a whole lot going on, but she doesn't look weak. Again, no concern, no frustration, no anger, no worry. You can't see her eyes, granted, but that's not everything when it comes to body language and facial expressions, as you probably know. So I'm going with deceptive on this one as well.
Will you ever do this again? Will you go alone on an excursion like this again?
If it was something that benefited my family, like a television show called Alone, I may attempt it in order to benefit my family's economy. Yeah.
There it is. She wants to be on a TV show. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty lame delivery there and setup, but I can see what she's saying there. So I think she's going for a TV, a fame or money play here.
You made a fire and I can make tea every night?
I did indeed make tea every day, partially because of my Britishness. But the other reason is when you're unable to collect a lot of carbs, the next best thing that you can do is to create a stockpile of micro minerals and vitamins so that you don't fall out.
This is the first time her voice has sounded shaky.
Create a stockpile of micro minerals and vitamins so that you don't fall out.
Sounds a little bit weak. And her story's changing. Now she's adding the parts about you have to have minerals, you have to have carbs, you have to have these things to sustain you. Even though before she said all I had to eat were leeks and hot water.
When you're unable to collect a lot of carbs, the next best thing that you can do is to create a stockpile of micro minerals and vitamins so that you don't fall out.
So this is getting a little bit iffy for me here as well. And she doesn't get into the details enough. No. Again, I think that she's going for the TV show.
Did you have survival gear with you to make a fire and stuff like that?
I had brought basic camping gear because this journey was only supposed to be a 3-day vacation.
What went through your mind when you stumbled upon that cabin? I mean, what were you feeling at that moment?
That was one of the heaviest snowstorms I had seen. I had actually gotten very lost at that point and didn't recognize that I was back at Edison Lake. I only saw white upon white in that storm. It was a little bit weird, but when I first came across it, it was a pristine Christmas tree and a tiny house, and it had markers like Santa's sleigh, and I could not understand. I actually thought I was losing my mind at that point, that I had somehow managed to make it to the North Pole. So I was not necessarily sure what I had come across. But when the door opened and I saw the best sleeping bag I had ever seen in the world, I wasn't necessarily thinking, oh my goodness, I'm rescued. I thought, it's a dry bed.
This is childish, and it makes me feel stupid listening to it. So I'm going to pass on this one. I think you can see what's going on here.
Wrap it up. What do you take away from this? How will you never forget this experience?
Well, one of the biggest things that you get a lot of time to do when you're on a mountain literally by yourself is you start thinking sage-like thoughts about what can you do to make the world a better place, or how can you make an impact in a positive way. I have gotten to meet some of America's best humans outside of all of the political jargon that you see on television. I now believe in different types of humans. And as much as I have missed my first chance of going to medical school, I do have a feeling that the healthcare world is going to see me again.
Yeah, this sounds like a play for a GoFundMe situation.
I have gotten to meet some of America's best humans.
From a body language and behavior perspective, this does not look right to me. It doesn't sound right to me from an interrogator's perspective. I don't think we're seeing someone being completely honest here. Maybe some of this happened. I don't think everything she's talking about that happened to her. I think a lot of that's made up, and I think she's might be going for a money or a fame play, being on TV and getting a GoFundMe situation set up. I don't know if she's done that, but I'll check into it as soon as I get off here, and I'll put it in the comments. But I don't know. I do know this doesn't sound right. So that's what I think. That's what it sounds like to me. What do you think? You may think something completely different, and that's totally fine. If you do, let me know. All right. If you have any questions about body language, let me know, and I'll get right to them.